everybody, Mike Burkholder, Contra Costa today. Today I've got Mark Meuser with me, who had a pretty big week last week in a pretty successful court case that got national, actually both local and national attention. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. The case you're talking about is Yvette Felarca versus Troy Worden. Early in September this year, Yvette Felarca filed a civil harassment restraining order against Troy Worden. And the purpose of this restraining order was to restrict the First Amendment rights of Troy Worden. And what she did is, by filing the civil harassment restraining order, she got a temporary restraining order that kept Troy 100 yards away from her. So while Troy, the president of Berkeley College Republicans, would be at the University of Berkeley promoting his events, if Yvette Felarca came onto campus, and Yvette Felarca is the national organizer for an organization called By Any Means Necessary, which is a part of the Antifa groups, and if Yvette Felarca came onto campus in order to protest one of his events, Troy would have to leave. So Troy was restricted in what he could do in promoting the events as the Berkeley College Republicans because of this restraining order. And so we went to court, we fought, we won. The court then, this last week, ordered that Yvette Felarca's civil harassment restraining order was not brought in good faith, and ordered Yvette Felarca to pay the attorney fees of Troy Worden.
And so basically, you get a scenario where it's a frivolous lawsuit filed, and you essentially weaponize the court system?
Yes, it was Yvette Felarca used by any means necessary to restrict the First Amendment rights of Troy Worden. So she was using the court, hoping that a Berkeley College Republican did not have the funds available to bring in attorneys like myself, the Dillon Law Group, Harmeet Dillon, senior partner, bring us in to defend his rights. Because if there was nobody there to defend his rights, to review 135 videos, to interview 30 witnesses, if there was nobody there who understood the court system good in there and defend Troy Worden, then she would have been able to silence his speech and have reign on the Berkeley campus to promote her agenda without any counter-argument.
What's it been like since the judgment for you?
It seems like every time I turn around, there's another reporter asking me a question. Yesterday we were trending on Fox News. We were one of the lead stories. It's just, every time I turn around, it's just been going crazy this last 5 days.
That's good. That's good for you.
Hey, we don't mind it, but I think there's some inside frustration about what Antifa has been doing, what happened in Charlottesville, and they liked seeing that the courts actually did something right for a change.
I think that was one of the first comments that I saw when I put out your guys' press release was a judge that finally got something right. Would you agree with that?
I've been around the court system enough. There's a lot of judges who do a lot of good stuff. There are plenty of examples that frustrate people.
Fair enough.
But this judge, throughout the whole entire process, he caught on very quickly just how frivolous the nature of this particular civil harassment restraining order. And the one sentence in the brief where he said, or in his order, where he said, there was no good faith grounds to bring this thing, and that was important to Troy. That was important to us, that the court actually got it, that this was so frivolous.
Yep. So the other reason why I wanted to bring you on was you have another big mission ahead. You're running for California Secretary of State, and I guess the question for me is, do you just wake up one day and want to do that, or how'd that come about?
Well, the Secretary of State is the chief election officer of the state of California. You are responsible for ensuring fair and free elections in the state. And no, I had no secret plans or agenda to run for California Secretary of State. But I had some attorney friends who came up to me and they said, Mark, you need to run for California Secretary of State. And I said, why would I do that? and they went through and showed me things like the 144% voter registration in Los Angeles. And as they showed injustice after injustice after injustice that was going on in our state, in our elections, that sense of injustice that caused me to fight for Troy Worden kicked up in me, and it's like, somebody has to do something.
Correct.
Just like I had to do something to defend Troy Worden's First Amendment rights, somebody had to step up and fight for Californians, had to fight for fair and free elections. We do not need special interests being able to use the votes of dead people, the votes of people who have moved, by bringing people in who will do anything for $1 to come in and vote more than one time. We live in America, one vote for one citizen. And we need to protect that. I mean, just 2 days ago, I was talking to somebody in Sacramento, and she had gone to the polls in November of 2016. And right above her name when she was signing the rolls was the name of her father-in-law. And she saw that he had voted. Her father-in-law has been dead for many years.
Jeez.
Somebody had come in and signed his name and voted for him. And she jokingly said, and he came all the way down here to vote, and he didn't even come over for dinner. I talked to somebody just a week ago in Los Angeles. They had, for 10 years, been trying to get their aunt removed from the voter rolls. And the register of voters will not remove them from the voter rolls because they have voted every single year or every single election for the last 10 years. They've been dead for over 10 years. A copy of a death certificate, and they will not remove them. So
is that the county's issue or is that the state's issue? Because different counties are responsible for that area.
under federal law
Okay.
and under California law, it is ultimately the responsibility of the Secretary of State. If the county is not doing their job of obeying federal and state election laws and cleaning up the voter rolls of those who are dead, those who have moved, duplicate entries, then it falls upon the Secretary of State to make sure it is done. Under the Help America Vote Act and a couple other acts like that, ultimately it is the Secretary of State's duty to maintain a statewide voter roll. And when they maintain a statewide voter roll, there's to make sure that if somebody moved from Los Angeles to Contra Costa County, that their voter registration in Los Angeles has been properly removed, and they're now registered in Contra Costa. Some counties are doing a really good job. Other counties are not doing a very good.
Which counties would you say are doing a good job?
From what I've been able to tell, Orange County is one of the best. Inyo County seems to be doing a pretty good job. Even here in Contra Costa, I have seen a lot of good stuff that's being done here in Contra Costa. You know, the three of the worst are Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco, where most of the population is in this state. You know,
Could Sanctuary City play into that?
it shouldn't. It
Okay.
shouldn't. I don't know that it will or not, but we have an issue right now where, like in Alameda, somebody's wife died in the summer of 2016. He went into the register of voters, gave a copy of his voter registration, gave a copy of the death certificate of his wife. And in that October, his wife received an absentee ballot. It's bad government because that costs the taxpayers like $4 per voter. So there's a good government sense of just removing these people who have passed away. But how insensitive of the government is it? Now this person just received his wife's voter registration, all the discussions that they've had about what candidate to vote for, all that comes flashing back in his head.
Yep.
That is just inconsiderate to the living spouse. It's not good government, and it creates the opportunity for fraud that is exercised by special interests in very close elections.
So essentially, depending on the household, I guess, if you've got a spouse that's passed and somehow that absentee ballot's submitted, hey, I didn't turn it in. I don't know why it got turned in, type of thing. You never know.
Well, Ventura County just recently actually got successfully prosecuted a man who voted for his dead son multiple times. I mean, there's a Mexican citizen. This just happened in October last year. A Mexican citizen stole the ID off of a dead man 25 years ago and has been voting for him for the last 25 years. If the county register of voters and the Secretary of State do not clean the voter rolls, it creates the opportunity for individuals to vote who should not be voting. I mean, I talked to a person in Sacramento just about a month ago. She works in a restaurant. There are a whole bunch of green card holders in the restaurant. Not illegal aliens, but green carders. But they're not allowed to vote.
Sure.
And there was about 20 of them there. And they were all bragging that they had cast votes. That's 20 people who are not authorized to cast ballots in the state of California who bragged that they had cast ballots. We need to clean up our voter rolls.
So how do you do that?
Well, it's called computers.
Work?
It's called databases. There's the National Social Security death record. We just need to compare it. The state of California allows us to use allows us to use private data to compare with our data. You use the United States Postal Service MOVE address database. You can look at tax records. There are so many different databases available. We can look at the green card,
Sure.
green card database and compare it with our voter rolls. The fact that anybody in the state of California who got a driver's license who did not show proof of citizenship, all those people can easily come off. We have green transformer boxes in neighborhoods that have 4 registered voters to them. All we have to do is this an actual address? If it's not an actual address and there's somebody registered, there might be a problem with that registered voter. And the problem is, people like that are voting. I mean, here's an interesting fact. I think there's like over 10,000 people in the state of California who the state of California does not even know their birth date for this registered voter. And over 4,000 of those people voted. It means that when those people registered to vote, either they were illegals or they did not properly fill in the form to register to vote, but some government worker just went ahead and didn't bother checking and just made them a registered voter, sent them registered materials, and they voted. And that's 2016. I mean, in 2016, it's not like I'm talking about stuff that happened 50 years ago or 20 years ago. I'm talking about problems that have been going on in 2014 and 2016. By not having clear registration rolls, when you go into a voter poll, on the wall there is a list of all the people who have not yet voted because they cross off the people who voted. I can tell you almost every week I hear a story about a busload of people who came into the poll and they all started looking at the wall, picking names, and going and saying, I'm John Smith, and they would sign the name and vote for John Smith.
So what about the people that have already, that haven't voted, and they go in there and their name's already checked off?
Well,
have you had those stories?
Oh, I get those all the time. I like to talk about George in Temecula. He came, first time he voted in the state of California. He showed up at the polls, and somebody had already voted for him. He was allowed to vote provisionally, but the other person who came in before him signed his name and voted. That was already in the machine. That vote already counted.
So you're basically canceling it out, or it's counting twice.
No, your provisional ballot's not going to count because somebody already voted for that name. So there's just so many issues with in election integrity. I mean, right now, the United States, among the 28 Western democracies, is ranked dead last in election integrity. The state of California, among the 50 states, is the second worst state when it comes to our elections. because of what we do with our military ballots, what we do with our provisional ballots. It rated across 14 different categories. California is ranked second to the bottom.
Who's the worst?
I think that was like Alabama or Louisiana. It was a southern state. I can't remember right this second.
So, you've kind of pointed out a lot of different horror stories, and just seems like people are voting multiple times, and dead people are voting. And I don't want to go conspiracy nut here, but what the heck is the Secretary of State actually doing? Why isn't he taking initiative to clean up the voting rolls and make it one vote for one person instead of ghosts voting? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah. I wish I knew. It seems common sense to all the various databases that are out there to just simply check our voter rolls. I mean, as citizens, if we want a driver's license, we're expected to occasionally go to the government and, renew our driver's license. But it seems to be that there's a philosophy right now in the Secretary of State that we want to make it as easy on everybody to vote, which is important. We don't want to go back to the days of, poll taxes and literacy tests. I mean, that's a bygone day of history. That's a sad chapter. We don't need to go there. But we do need to have some election integrity in our process. And why the current Secretary of State is ignoring election integrity in the name of convenience doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
My message of we need to clean up the voter rolls is resonating with both Republican and Democrats. When I talk to people, they understand the concept of one person, one vote. They do not want dead people voting. They do not want people who are unauthorized to vote casting a vote. If you are a Republican or if you are a Democrat, if you are a Republican or you are a Democrat or you're an independent, you want your vote to count. You want to tell the government the direction that you want the government to go. You don't want special interests dictating to you the direction that the government is going to go, because they are able to pick off the close elections because they can swing just a few votes here or there.
And that's what people need to understand about this seat. It's an apolitical seat. It's not a Democrat seat. It's not a Republican seat. It's kind of an integrity seat, because you're not controlling each race. You're more focused on making sure people vote that are allowed to vote. So I think what's interesting for you is that you spent the last year and a half on the campaign trail, kind of not only your race, but you were in the presidential race. You ran 2 campaigns before that yourself. How for you, do you even have a home anymore?
Yes, I do have a
Suitcase?
home. I do live in Contra Costa. I have been there a lot over the last couple of weeks because of the holiday season, but we're back out on the road even this afternoon. I'm heading down south. Every day it seems like I'm in another town. But you mentioned a thing that I was involved in politics in 2016, and I was actually in Wisconsin and Michigan for the presidential recounts. And I was in 6 different counties in 2 different states. And there were some Republican counties and some Democrat counties. And I could tell you that of all the elected officials that I was dealing with when it came to the recounts, they all pretty much wanted one thing. They wanted fair elections. Now, I wasn't in the big cities. I wasn't in Detroit. I wasn't in
Madison.
No, Milwaukee. Okay.
Milwaukee.
I wasn't in Detroit. I wasn't in Milwaukee. And I heard a few horror stories that were going on there, where there was some political stuff that was going on by those people. I was in some of the more rural areas. But I'd say as the vast majority of our election officials, most of our counties are not trying to politicize our vote. They just want to have fair and honest elections. Unfortunately, it appears that our current Secretary of State, the Register of Voters in Los Angeles County, are trying to do things by selectively enforcing the laws to protect their political party. And the Secretary of State should not be politicizing the Secretary of State's race. You should ensure fair and free elections. The Secretary of State should be registering businesses in a timely manner. We don't need 3 weeks to register a business in California where it takes 10 minutes over in Nevada. We just need to do our job. You know, you're right. It's not a partisan, it should not be a partisan office, but it's currently been turned into a partisan office. An example of that is the senatorial recall that's going down in Los Angeles and Orange County. They changed the rules midstream, and even though a judge told them not to, the Secretary of State continued to push it to ensure that the people of Los Angeles and Orange County lost their ability to recall an elected official in a timely manner. It is their right as a Californian to recall their elected officials, to keep them accountable. But they played every game possible to try to protect that 2/3 supermajority that they had. They did not want to lose a Democrat who basically said one thing on the campaign trail and then did another thing. And the people got upset, and they gathered signatures in a timely fashion, and the Secretary of State and the legislature just changed the rules midstream.
So why wouldn't, when that happens, why is no one being charged with fraud or arrested or, you know, I know each county is a little different and the Secretary of State has the authority, but it seems like with that blatant kind of, I guess, law breaking, why is no one being held accountable?
Well, who's the chief attorney for the state of California? Of the same party, of the same persuasion.
Got it.
So when you have somebody who's going to commit fraud and the person who's supposed to be prosecuting them has the same political agenda and the same purpose, there is a loss of integrity. There is a loss of trust in the system. And it's a sad story of what we have going on, but that's what happens when we don't bring integrity to the elections. The Secretary of State's race, as you said, is supposed to be it's a partisan office, but it shouldn't matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat. Your vote should count. If you're entitled to vote, you should be allowed to cast your ballot. There shouldn't be any games. There shouldn't be partisan politics and how your vote is counted.
Yeah, and see, and for me, it goes beyond Democrat Republican to where I'm now politically confused because both sides they're just not honest. I don't think. I think it's all about gaining seats, gaining money, fundraising. For me personally, I look for candidates with integrity because that's how they're going to vote. They're not going to just go with party lines just because. And I think it's interesting, you have, even Catherine Baker down in San Ramon, Danville area, she doesn't really go party line. She goes by the issue, which is great. I wish more people would vote like her with their head versus, arm twisting and all that. And I think you're in that same boat where it's right is right, wrong is wrong. Let's do what's right. And I appreciate that about you.
Thank you. It's important that we elect people who represent our values.
Yep.
And the Secretary of State is in the position of protecting the people's right to make their voice heard. And so that's why I'm running for Secretary of State, because I want to be the sheriff of California elections. I want to make sure that if you tell Sacramento that you want something to happen, if you want to run a ballot initiative, I don't want to put hurdles up in front of your right to petition the government. I don't want to, if you're authorized to vote, your vote should count. We should not allow special interest to come in and thwart the will of the people. It is time that we have elections that are fair and free.
And less manipulative of the wording of some of the propositions that are being allowed to be.
That's a whole nother can of worms.
So why don't, before we wrap this up, why don't you give people your website and how they could get a hold of you and, maybe hold a fundraiser or have a conversation, cup of coffee, whatever it may be.
The best way to get a hold of me is to go to my website, which is www.markmeuser.com, MarkMeuser.com. That's www.markmeuser.com. You can also find me on Twitter at Mark Meuser or on Facebook /Mark P. Meuser.
Well, Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us before your travels start up for the year, and hopefully you come back at some point in the spring. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This is Mike Berkler, Contra Costa Today. Please like, subscribe, share, leave comments, happy remarks, snide remarks. Just let's get some dialogue going. Check out Mark Meuser online. Just follow his race, because I think integrity is such a big thing in this upcoming election year. It's going to be crazy. So again, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Check us out in the next coming days where we'll have another guest. Take care.